everybody for joining us. My name's Chad McAfee. I'm with Oracle. I've been with Oracle for a little over 4 years now after spending 20 plus years at Microsoft, so it was a big change. Give you a little bit of background on myself. I'm responsible for our customer engineering for cloud, for OCI, and that includes going after digital natives and working with and building partnerships like customers like Uber, for example, who you may have seen in previous announcements. But it also includes what we're doing around the AI infrastructure as it relates to startups and a lot of other companies working on the plumbing behind the AI capabilities and so forth. I've got Eric and Martin with me, and I'll let these guys introduce themselves.
Okay, great. Yeah, my name is Eric Bergenholtz. I'm a VP of Strategy and Operations for Oracle AI. It just means that I run rhythm of the business, as well as I spend a lot of time with customers and partners trying to further our business. And it looks like I have to work on my headshot. I think my head is about 4 times as big as Chad's.
My hair is so boofy it goes out of the frame. So I'm Martin, the president and COO of Cohere. So I do all the non-magical stuff, anything that's not product and eng, so the commercial, financial, operational parts of the business. I've been there for a bit over a year, which seems like 10 years in regular time. I was previously the CFO of YouTube, and before that spent an embarrassingly long time in consulting.
Yep. So these guys definitely are right in the heart of what's going on around the Gen AI world, and obviously the work that we do with Cohere and our own Gen AI service. So I'm gonna walk us through a few questions as we go. We started late, so if we have time, we can do some questions. But I'm gonna start with Eric in particular. In talking about AI, the obvious is like everybody knows you can use Gen AI to write papers. Hell, my 13-year-old knows it very well, which we have to have conversations all the time, and funny pictures and all that good stuff. But I think or at least what I'm interested in, I think a lot of people here is interested in, is what does this have, what does AI and Gen AI and the effect that it has in the workplace and what we're doing around work and the landscape. We know about code and things that we're doing in that space, but I'm curious what your thoughts are.
Yeah, so I think it kind of depends on what line of business or what your work actually is in terms of what the impact is. And I think the closer you are to become a knowledge worker, which I would classify probably everyone in this room as, the impact of generative AI and its capabilities are going to be felt much sooner than if not. And I think, generally speaking, the one obstacle towards very broad adoption is likely cost and performance. We'll talk about that a little bit later, perhaps. But I think, and if we can shrink that, then we can start to explore other use cases that aren't necessarily just around productivity and efficiency, which I think that's where the focus is today because of just a function of cost. If I look at what we're doing just inside of Oracle, how we're applying generative AI in terms of our day-to-day, we're starting to see some pretty significant changes, not only in terms of how we find information. So inside of Oracle, we've deployed what we call kind of like a playground. You can think of it as like safe GPT. So we now have at our disposal just a way that we can interact with a generative AI agent, and we can summarize documents, we can classify, we can do all the interesting things that you do with let's say, ChatGPT or something similar. And we've also taken that technology and rolled it out to our customers as well as our support reps. So I would say, like in summary for the folks here in the room, I think it's already starting to happen. And obviously we have folks that are on different parts of the adoption curve. And it's really, we're still in the very early adopter stage, I would say. But it's going to be around really efficiency. So all the mundane, all the toil that you go through on a daily basis, I think that's going to be relieved and sort of delegated to AI. So it's really going to make us much more productive. It already is. And then we're going to be left spending our time on more higher value tasks and more creative tasks that generative AI is not necessarily as well suited as or for.
Got it. So it could take the job of a moderator. Moderator.
Potentially.
Yeah, anyhow, so in order to achieve all that, though, you know, AI needs to be reliable, needs to be good. How do you define good AI?
Yeah, that's not really a softball question, I would say. I think there's some table stakes that you have to meet in order to deploy really any AI system, and it's around, you know, privacy, security, safety, you know, we'll say accuracy or correctness. I think that's number one. I think number two, it's, for me personally, it's around how you engage or interact with the AI system. And today, if you look at many of the LLMs out there or generative AI systems, they're fairly sensitive to the types of prompts that you give it. And this is going to get better over time. So let's say if you're using a Cohere model or, you know, Claude 3 or whatever, you know, you're going to have to play around with the prompts a little bit. But as that gets better, I think the way that we interact with the systems, it's just going to sort of meld into the background and become a natural part of how we talk to these systems. We don't. It's just going to become a fabric of the various systems and applications that we use. I mean, if you look at today, we're not overly concerned about whether some application or system is connected to the internet. It's just kind of there. It's almost expected. And I think we'll see the same things with AI. So to me, it's a lot about how us humans interact with these systems that's going to make a big difference.
So we're talking about workplace, work, you know, and the change of work and what it means to be, you know, good models and kind of disappearing. I think that was something I was going to hit on a little later. Martin, you know, you've got a lot of expertise from a company. Kind of what makes you guys unique a little bit is the focus on enterprise. I'm going to quote you on something I read, even though I know you, but I had to read this. Was your Cohere is focused on being the F-150. Versus the Bugatti, right? Where it's really about being useful. And you know, as a growing up in Indiana, I like trucks, so I like this. Why don't you hit on like what's some of the promising use cases in the enterprise and in the business space for AI?
Yeah, well, I think that that analogy was, if I can spell it out, and then I'll get directly to the question. I think if an enterprise is looking to equip its technical you know, field force with vehicles, and then I take the head of that field force for a test drive in a Bugatti, she's going to be really impressed with how fast it goes. But it doesn't really make sense to roll out Bugattis for all the technical field representatives. What you need is a heavy-duty truck. You need an F-150. That means it's going to be the right kind of cost to deploy at scale. You can get 5,000 of them. It's got a payload. It's got, you know, the right seats that you need, put mud guards on it, put a winch on the front, whatever. And so really we're focused on making the boring but very, very valuable tools and capabilities that enterprises need to create business value at massive scale. And so what that means is a number of things in terms of the use cases. I think one is that you need to have generative models that can be deployed at scale efficiently, right? And obviously, you know, Oracle has a pretty amazing network to provide the GPUs that are required, but they're very expensive and they're not, you know, they don't grow on trees. So the more efficient you can make it to have the same throughput, latency, and fine tune with your data, with enterprise data, for the specific use cases that you need them for, just like you'd equip your F-150 with the right stuff that you need for you know, what they're being used for, is very important. And so I think being able to deploy very, very safely in the data environment of the customer, you know, on OCI, single tenancy, being safe, even government cloud, things like that, that's very important. I think the second thing, though, is that LLMs are a bit like your annoying uncle at Thanksgiving who always knows the answer to everything, and you don't know whether he's right or wrong because he speaks with equal conviction whether he's right or wrong. LLMs are like that. They will hallucinate. They will give you an answer, and you don't know if it's right or wrong. And that's fine if you're writing a limerick about your llama, but it's not fine if you're doing something, you know, in the enterprise. And that's why we think search and retrieval is absolutely essential, and that's the real breakthrough, we believe, use case or meta use case, let's say, you know, umbrella use case. And the point is that, you know, we don't want to think of these models like Jeopardy contestants, where they have to memorize everything before they go on to Jeopardy. But rather, we want them to be very intelligent and know how, where, when to look for information that they were not trained on, retrieve that, generate a response, an answer, a point of view, cite where all of that information is from so that you as the user can be assured that it's right and wrong, or that it's right and authoritative, and do that safely in your data environment. That's called RAG, Retrieval Augmented Generation. That phrase was coined by Patrick Lewis, who is at Cohere. And the better your search capabilities are, the better that system is going to work. You don't need to fill up the model like a Jeopardy contestant to memorize every possible thing it needs to know, but rather very efficiently search across an enormous range of information. You can think about countless use cases, I'm sure all of us, about where that would be really valuable. And in the enterprise, some of the things that I think you're even providing through your Fusion apps or NetSuite, or allowing your own enterprises to do inside their environment by connecting generative models, retrieval models, search, re-rank, et cetera. That's where I think there's really exciting enterprise use cases to create value.
Yep, no, makes sense. You mentioned cost. I think both of you talked about cost and the network and so forth. So I know Oracle, we're doing a lot of things to kind of address some of those roadblocks, but those around the infrastructure and what we do with our network and where our locations are and being presence and as it goes to inferencing, how to get closer out to where people are. But Martin, what are the roadblocks that are you seeing that needs to be addressed for enterprises or of any size business, I guess ultimately, and adopting AI technologies and Gen AI?
Yeah, well, I mean, cost is certainly one, and I think that's where having the right kind of infrastructure to build on and build with is important, and obviously you all are doing a lot there. Really thinking about not just doing a cool POC, proof of concept. It's fine if the board is saying, show me something, and then you show a great POC for 4 users. But then when you do the math to roll that out to 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, it just doesn't work. And so we really encourage, and we work with our customers very closely on day one to say, what do you think this is going to be doing in production? How many financial analysts do you have? How many end customers? How much are they going to use it? And then do the math to say, what kind of compute footprint will you need? What's the right way to set these models up? How do you deploy retrieval, RAG to minimize the context length that you need and the input tokens, all those things. So I think that's number one. I think number two, though, is there's also something that one of my colleagues said is be very wary of death by 1,000 POCs. And certainly in 2023, everyone was doing proofs of concept. Sometimes they'd hire consultants, I used to be one, and spend months going through prioritizing 100 use cases and doing business cases and so on. I think the real innovators we're seeing, they're just taking something and just doing it. And they're doing it at scale in production. Because and picking something, we use these tools, of course, ourselves. We have our own internal conversational agents, retrieval augmented chat, linked to our systems. We've done away with onboarding. We don't even do onboarding. Because any new person, just say, here you go, use what we call Coral, or we call it Pearl when it's attached to Notion, G Drive, Docs, whatever. They can find whatever they need just by asking a question, much better than any onboarding. And so that wasn't the most breakthrough use case in the history of the world, but it's something that people use, they get used to it, it forces you to figure out how to deploy at scale. So we found enterprises that pick something and then say, how do we drive that through so we're actually using it with 20,000 of our employees or whatever it is, figure out how the GPUs work, figure out regions and data access rights and those kind of things. Then layering on more and more advanced and more sensitive and maybe more and more risky use cases is easier because you've done all of that basic work. So I think that's there's certainly a cost element and thinking about that in advance, but then there's also just get on and build something.
Yeah. Yeah, you kind of alluded to the next thing I was going to ask Eric was around why now? I think especially in the business world, enterprise, larger companies, they tend to be a little bit late movers. One of the frustrating things as a technologist was always working, with late movers. I liked, to get working on advanced things. But why now? I think Martin hit on some of that as well.
Yeah, no, he did. I might pile on a little bit there, Martin. No, I've been watching this space for a long time, and we're finally at a point where the technology is real and it's actually being deployed. I think it kind of depends a little bit again, kind of what your business is. There is a risk, though, if you are a late adopter in the space. I think this technology, generative AI or AI in general, is going to be disruptive to a lot of incumbents out there. And I think, you should look at this technology in one sense as, it's a technology, and be pragmatic about how you adopt it. And after all, technology is a means to achieve some end. Although, that said, I think this technology is moving so fast that unless you start the journey now, you risk getting left behind, and it's going to have a detrimental impact on your business. Because those businesses that are finding those use cases or those problems to solve to make their business more efficient, they can take those efficiencies and savings and plow it back into the business, leaving some of their competitors in the dust. So I would say, identify use cases or problems that are compelling for your business. Don't run around looking for things to summarize or to classify. I mean, those are things. They'll drive efficiencies for sure. But look at problems or efficiencies or use cases in your business that will actually move it forward drastically. And I would say, to Martin's point, I think it's important to be an early adopter from the perspective of building the muscle that's required to understand, how do I adopt this in my business? What's the technology suited for? What's its capability and so forth? Because I think you actually have to make a cultural shift and almost become an AI first company. And the only way to do that is to go from ideation all the way through to production. And undoubtedly, I think you're going to expose issues in your organization. So skill gaps, process gaps. You're going to have policies to contend with, probably people to contend with, and so forth. But are all these little frictions that is going to prevent you from adopting AI in anger very quickly unless you sort of start today. So I think it's a journey. So start now. Otherwise, I think there's a risk.
Well, you gotta. I mean, right now there's a lot of choices, a lot of models that you have to think through. And Martin, how do you look at choosing the right model for the right scenario? Like, there's a lot of different things, a lot of different startups, building out different ones. A few of them made kind of have one super well known, and then other ones there. So what's the process?
It's a great point, and there's we just focus on enterprise, and I've been around the block a couple of times, you can tell by the color of my beard, and I've rarely seen companies that are good at enterprise and consumer at the same time, of any size, let alone a startup. So if you're creating a model that really is focused on a consumer chatbot, it's very tough to then say that model is going to be the best model for deploying in enterprise. We just make models that are going to be deployed in enterprise. And there's a lot of elements to that. I think the efficiency component, the ability to customize and fine-tune, the fact that our capabilities and our platform is available on every single cloud, and the fact that multilingual, like you could decide not to launch a chatbot in Brazil in Portuguese, but you can't decide not to do that if you're an enterprise. And so I think some of those things where we've been focused on the things that matter for enterprise. Now, they may not matter for every single enterprise and every single use case, but certainly where data privacy is very important, where you want to deploy carefully, inside your data environment and not go out through APIs to, some of the other models are only available on, Azure, for example, or only available on GCP. So you're basically making a cloud choice when you're making a model choice, as opposed to choosing the right models or the right capabilities for you, and then deploying them carefully in your environment. So I think it's really thinking a bit like you were saying earlier. What do you want it for, and how do you think about not just doing a nice POC, but what is this going to be at scale in production, down the line in 6 months, 12 months, and what's going to be important in terms of multilingual, in terms of where you're deploying it, how close you can get it to your end users, how secure your data is, how you fine-tune and customize, and what the ultimate deployment cost will be over time.
Yep, makes sense. I want to be conscious of the time. So last question, and maybe I'll ask you both, but you alluded to this, Eric, and I know Greg Pavlik, a colleague of ours, made a quote recently. I read an article talking about, like, we know when AI really made it is when you don't know AI exists. right? It's kind of in the background. It becomes
Yeah.
extremely boring. Right now it's exciting when we see it, but that's what it takes. So breakthroughs are needed to get there. So I'm curious, like what you see, coming through as from what the breakthroughs and the things that we need to address as a, market companies like Oracle and Cohere and so forth.
Yeah, no, I think there are a couple of prerequisites. I mean, I'm no doubt about it, we're going to see breakthroughs. I think that the focus needs to be on performance and cost. We need to drive performance up and drive costs down. And that's going to unlock actually I think a slew of sort of breakthroughs and innovations, not only adoption, but think of it this way. So generative AI has this, great ability to kind of predict things, right? That's sort of the foundation of the model. So you can imagine if you drive down or you improve performance, drive down cost, all of a sudden I can have an AI system that's almost anticipating answering questions before I've even asked them. As a matter of fact, I could be halfway through asking my question or making my request, and I will be getting an answer back. So if you sort of extrapolate that and you put that into our systems, the systems can just make us so much more productive and actually kind of work ahead of us. I think that's one area that I'm really interested in. I think on there's a ton of other areas, in terms of, material science and in particular in healthcare, which I think there's unlimited possibilities there. On the more speculative side, I've been holding out for, artificial general intelligence, and I'm waiting to see that, and I think we're a little bit of ways there. I mean, I think the LLM systems today they're pretty amazing and pretty awesome, but I think AGI that's going to be the breakthrough that I'm holding my breath for.
Got it. Martin, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, I'm going to give a much more boring answer, but I think I love that idea that when you don't even notice it is when we know it's really here. It's same like with the internet. I do remember when the web browser came out in '93, but then how now in life you don't even notice when we're using the internet. I think two things. One is building into all of the products that we use already every day. And I'll use the example of Oracle. You guys have some incredible apps. I think people are already starting to use those and not even kind of realize how many things are just getting better and better and taking all the yucky stuff out of your job built into the stuff that you already use and just improving, 'cause a lot of it's improving workflow and so on. And so I think some of the things that you all do with the app side of your business, the database side of your business, and everyone's just going to be adopting those because it'll just already be part of the business. And then the second is making it very easy for enterprises to just start to roll things out in production. And Oracle's certainly a company that knows how to serve enterprise. That's something that we've built ourselves on, which is why we, I think, work very well together. And making it easy for enterprises to do all of those things and anticipate all those questions to answer to get stuff into production quickly. I 100% agree with you that companies that are late could cease to exist. Just like, back in the late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of companies didn't adopt digital quickly and are not around any longer. Those that kind of got on the front foot there did very well. And so I think, I think that's going to be the breakthrough is going to be who is quick to just get this stuff out, get this into production and then build from there.
Got it. All right. Well, I think we are up on time, correct? So thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Being up here. Thank you.